Committee, month of March. Ms. Hinkle, can you please do the roll call?
Tamara Banks, Jason Broughton,
Hello.
Ruby Bravo, Joe Brito, Justin Chenault, Rupert Farley, David Faust, Denise Flatley,
Here.
Robert Fogg, Glenn Goldsmith,
Here, present.
Larry Gross,
Here.
Rebecca Herron, Yolanda Hipsky,
Here.
Michael Hoyt, Sandra Jagruth, David McLaughlin.
Here.
Is Tawanda right?
Here.
Tawanda Parker. Ken Hoag, James Powell, Matthew Rowe, Rodney Thomas, Alan Watkins,
Here.
Clinton Wells,
Present.
Timothy Welsh,
Here.
Kevin Wilkinson.
Here.
Are you sure we,
Rupert's on his.
Mark Rupert, he's coming in.
all right, awesome. All right, and we for
All right. Moving on to item number 3, approval of today's agenda. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Move, second
Second.
by Mr. Brayton. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, moving to number 4, approval of the February 12th meeting minutes. Anyone have any issues with that? If not, can I get a motion to approve those?
So moved.
All right, second by Mr. Wilkinson. And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No opposed. All right, number 5, public comment. Anybody from the public want to speak? Do we have anybody online or any email? Anyone? Bueller? Okay, moving on. Number 6, VDOT and transit report. Anyone have any issues with VDOT? No one? No one? I do. Okay. Good list.
Okay.
All right. Lansdowne Road between, right in front of the Parkwood subdivision. Deep Run is undercutting the road and they'll probably lose it if they don't do it this spring. Telephone line is hanging in the air, 2 spots. Guardrails hanging there. 607 Guinea Station Road, about a mile before the KOA campground. There is a pretty sizable, I'd say a 12-inch drop off on the side of the road for about that mile. And you got all these older people with their RVs. That's a pretty dangerous situation down through there. Benchmark Road, same issue at the intersection of Benchmark and Mine Road, right by the railroad tracks there. And then a general complaint is, when are they going to clean the sand and salt out of the curb and gutters that's everywhere? They could recycle some of it and use it again next year. And then the last item I got is the amount of trash on the sides of the roads everywhere. It's atrocious. I-95 being the worst of it. So that's a VDOT thing. I'm not going to pick that one up. That's all I got for them. All right, anyone else?
I can add one little thing.
Right.
You may have heard that on Route 17 that it was closed down, George Washington District, for about 7 hours last week because of the fact that there had been a line down or that was too low, that a tractor trailer wound up catching the corner and ripping the line down, and so electric was down and so forth. There were 2 kind of detours. There was one that went north above 17, and then came back in around South Gateway Boulevard. And there was another one that actually used Greenbank Road and then cut across to Sanford Drive and then went all the way to 17. So at least we did have 2 detours, but it reminded me, as a person who lives on Sanford Drive, this is what it always used to look like when Geico used to let out, and 17 had all the different, congestion on it. So
Right.
it was good to have opportunities to avoid that for those 7 hours that the road was closed. That's it.
So this seems like the forum. I will say that Green Spring
and North Stafford, basically from mine all the way down to Vine, variously looks like the topographical map of the moon. And obviously there's no lighting, so it's borderline like dangerous and hazardous at night. Just traveling down there, trying to avoid the various gouges, potholes, plus, there's no sidewalks, so walking, you're trying to verge and trying to avoid a dog or whatever, and not trash or suspension in the process.
Yeah, this is the form for that one.
But that,
Throw them out there. All right.
So you just saying the potholes surface degradation at
yeah,
Green
like,
Spring to Mine Road?
so mine,
Yeah.
Green Spring, basically all the way down to Vine.
Okay.
Yeah, it looks like that road right before the people come out and ambush you, just because it's that bad.
Okay.
Vine itself is absolutely gorgeous, but
Okay. Green Spring.
getting there is just not great.
All right.
I advocated for my neighborhood.
Any other, yeah, I mean, listen, when I ride around, I take mental notes on stuff like that. Bring it here, give it to John or Linda, who's not here tonight, right? That's usually the VDOT lady. All right. Moving on to number 7, action items. All right. We as CTAC are going to make a presentation to the policy committee on our stance on what we decided on the river crossing. We are going to do it in when, John? April meeting?
Yes, right now, it's been scheduled for the April meeting.
All right, so we're scheduled for the April meeting to give a presentation. We have 10 minutes with questions and answers. Alan has produced I think, a very good video that kind of lays out how we got to where we are and kind of shows things, which I think a lot of people see. Has everyone seen that? In all the,
I haven't, I've missed the last 2 meetings and
is that something we can pull up here?
Yep,
Or-
we have it.
Okay,
Alan, don't you have that on
Presentation.
YouTube?
It's the one that we did show last meeting, but it's essentially the same. Now, before we show that, one of the things that they did ask at the policy board meeting too was not just necessarily what our choice for, the option C modifications that we made, but also why. Why we didn't
Right.
pick the A, B, C, and D, so forth. So there, this is gonna be made available, if not already, and there are 3 different kind of links literally to YouTube videos there. One for just what we decided as far as CTAC option C is the middle one, as you can see right there. But the other one that's at the top that says this presentation, that's one that actually is a video of this slide presentation. And then the bottom one is just a new thing that I thought we might want to involve, that involves some erosion that might be interfering as well.
what's the time run on it?
Okay, if we're gonna be talking about why we chose what we chose, then it would wind up being the first one, and that's over 9 minutes long.
Okay,
The CTAC option C one is, I think, 5:50, and then 1.5 minutes for the erosion. So it's certainly above 10 minutes, from above 15 minutes, it's about 17 total minutes before we get into, what questions or discussion they might want to have.
all right, this is why we're having this discussion night, because I think what we need to do is nail down what we're going to present to the thing. We want to keep it short, concise, and not I don't want to say fall asleep, but you know how they get. They so
Well, this is a slide presentation. This is the first sheet of it. So literally everything that is in that top link for the movie for the presentation is included here as slides. So if you just wanted to kind of run through the slideshow here, you can just, go through it very quickly.
Before you start with that, how long do you want to provide for question and answer?
That can be as long as.
well, You say the whole 10 minutes should include a question and
Yeah,
answer.
you should, the
Um,
10-minute kind of goal for the presentation should include a little bit of time for interruptions or clarifications to the policy. If they want to go down an additional thing, that's within their thing, but they're not expecting, if they're going to stop you and ask questions for, 15 minutes, they're going to want you to still try to wrap it up short. So
So
it should really focus on
shoot for 6 minutes. allow about
executive
4
summary
minutes.
level.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Sorry, just trying to get an idea of what level of trimming needed to be done.
Okay. So if you just want to show the slides real quickly and then we'll go to the other thing. Just so that people have the background. This is basically the background why we elected to choose this CTAC option C with modifications. You don't have to, you can just breeze through it because we'll make this available. It's things that we've seen
Right.
already.
Right. It's all the data.
So
Yeah.
right off the top, we could probably move a lot of the data slides to like a backup section at the end of the presentation where they can review that at their own leisure with some
Right.
presenter notes underneath.
We wanted them to be able to refer to the reasons why, and that's essentially what this slideshow is.
Right.
And the links are on there, so if they want to jump right to see everything else. But for our actual presentation, it would probably be just the, the CTAC option C with the modification.
Yeah,
Oh, I see. I misunderstood what you said. I thought you were at 9 minutes.
okay.
10 minutes for the
The
first
The
one.
the video of this slideshow, since it's so much more in depth, why we decided what we decided is that one. And then the actual,
So the second one is what you have planned to
Right.
present.
right, and then, of course, if they wanted to actually do a little bit further investigation and see what I was talking. I mean, you might want to show the link to the erosion one, just so you know what's there. Just so that everybody has the same kind of background. If you want, it's only a minute and a half long, the bottom one.
So we're gonna propose, am I understanding correctly that we're proposing option C as the preferred option
Option C with the modifications.
with
that
the
we added to it.
modification? And what are the modifications?
We show you the video.
It's the 6-minute video.
Go ahead and play the 6-minute video.
Might be on the speakers for the.
Yeah. I think this one I saw. This should.
I think it's pretty concise.
Excellent graphics.
Huh?
How many I understand there's a lot of, easements that are maintained by the river. I think it's the Virginia Outdoor Foundation. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is that a nonprofit or is it related
It
to?
actually is
Corporation. It's
Yeah.
empowered by the state. They're unique in their,
How many crossings the easements allow us to use to cross this river? One.
one.
So what are we
And-
proposing two?
Actually, staff would make an extremely strong recommendation. I know that Spotsylvania members of this board might feel differently, but we are under no uncertain terms that Spotsylvania is not included as far as this river crossing study crossing the river. Staff has had conversations, we would not show any line that goes to Spotsylvania County until we're directed by them and their board to explore an option. Right now, they are sadly opposed to this, to a option that explores Spotsylvania right now. They're even opposed to Stafford and
So Spotsylvania is opposed to
a river crossing.
a crossing on their,
No, actually, completely.
No-
Other than the one that's down near New Post. So
Okay.
we will not be drawing a line into Spotsylvania.
I thought they came back 6 months after y'all went for the study and said something.
Staff has said it. The Spotsylvania reps on our board and their board of supervisors have said no. So
Right.
until they vote yes on it, and
Well, I don't know that
document
the
that
board would,
here.
you know, all the board would be exactly for that option either, but you gotta show.
I agree that they feel differently than folks here, but that is,
Right,
we don't want to, FAMPO does not want to put something that FAMPO is, that draws a line in Spotsylvania right now. That is not our direction. It's, you can say it leaves it open, but I would not draw a line.
why?
Drawing a line makes it
I
a lot
strongly disagree,
clearer.
John,
I agree,
and I'd say why, because in order to even build a bridge, doesn't matter who it is, you're gonna need spotsy support to fund the thing. Eventually, down the road, you're going to.
no, not necessarily, no.
I think you will. Because the city's not gonna be able to afford it.
I mean, Spotsylvania would not be funding something that's
So,
on the other side of the road.
oh,
That's
I understand that.
why I'm
So
nervous.
therefore, there is no bridge, is what I'm trying to get at. I mean, you gotta, there is something added to. It's a regional project. This is a regional
I
thing
agree,
here.
but
Right.
drawing a line into Spotsylvania is completely outside the scope and is in direct confrontation with the directions that FAMPO's been given as far as the river crossing, particularly from Spotsylvania. But I'm like, yes, we should be exploring it into Spotsylvania to a thing, but until they tell us to do so, that staff is very opposed to that little green dot right now. Not necessarily, it's not a judgment call on the merits of that, because it has merits. It's just that have been directed, definitely
Do they
not
have
go that
Do
direction.
they have public comment section at the policy hearing?
And remember, this is
Let your-
that we're
give me
just
your
asking
presentation.
them to consider.
Well,
We're not saying.
But could you
you gotta
say
get the,
generic, that this allows for more opportunities to add on to the road system in the future?
I agree, like, say that, don't draw a dotted line. That dotted line is,
Cause they'll read into that, right?
I mean, I'm still trying to figure out, I mean, whether we draw the line or not, I mean, whether Spotsylvania County wants it or not. I'm trying to figure out, why are we even drawing a line if we know that we have easements that we cannot, that we are not gonna be able to deal with?
There's no easement where deed was.
yeah, it is.
There is no, okay,
Yeah, no conservation easement right there.
is that correct?
This is the map that shows it.
Doesn't Fredericksburg have an easement all the way up the river?
Well, you guys are falling right in line.
Yeah.
Nothing.
They have
This one is gonna be in a map.
anything that's there.
No, they approved the overlay, so the site
Is
Right, green.
owned by.
but you don't.
But
have big
our area.
You're dismissing that?
Well, what I'm saying is.
I was just
Oh,
curious if that would.
option D would cross, they don't,
So.
what does the overlay do?
city doesn't own that, and there are no
What
easements.
is the overlay?
The
City doesn't have.
data center
that-
overlay
Yeah.
that the city just did.
Data Center Overlay District? Which I read about it in the paper, has it passed?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay, it did
By
pass.
right now.
It's an overlay district. It's, what it is that you have the underlying zoning,
Again,
you have the underlying
Fredericksburg's
district.
easement. meeting.
And then basically it's a district, basically a district on top of it. A good example would be, a highway corridor overlay district. The, H5 is established to provide, benefits to localities, to provide additional architectural, protections and, you know, reviews for buildings that are going along a historic route that goes to a
right.
building. And so, you'll have the underlying zone, you know, general business zoning district underneath it, but then on the top of it, you'll put another district on the top of it. So you have additional setbacks, you'll have to go through the architectural review
Oh,
board,
okay.
things like that. But in this, it's a data center overlay district. I have to go look at the.
It must give,
ordinance itself.
yeah, right, but it must give them by right, maybe, in that, is that whatever that zoning is, maybe?
I'd have to look at the,
Yeah, I'm sure it's,
I'd have to look at the
I'm
ordinance.
sure a lawyer would have to get involved. Yeah.
But yeah, to answer your question, as soon as you put in that green bridge, basically the blue bridge, green bridge is now prohibited.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Well, okay, in my humble opinion, I wouldn't build the blue bridge, I'd build the green bridge and then run a new river road back over there, but that's just me. I'm just a civil engineer, don't worry about it.
I don't,
The idea was that this creates some flexibility, because whether or not, you know, the TOD that the city places is going to prohibit bridges that are welcomed by, let's say, Stafford County or someone else, then you have the opportunity to do something instead. It provides the flexibility. You also, if you were to do the line for blue and then sometime down the road, consider doing something else, like where the green one is that goes down at Stotsy. There's
You
The idea
reset
is
the
creating
process at that
flexibility.
point. You're changing the termini and the crossing locations and what networks is, that's a full reset. You can't just go down to say C, then go, no, we jump to D, that's others, and it's, I mean, you're changing the jurisdictions. So,
Yeah, but you're looking at it with blinders on.
Which one did we vote for though?
option C.
We did vote for,
That
okay.
that was the consideration that leaves it open. I'm not saying it's not possible. My thing is, once you draw a line on it, then that's a different conversation than saying, let Spotsylvania explore how it wants to connect into that infrastructure, because it's almost universally in Spotsylvania. With the asterisk of that, it also has to cross the city of Fredericksburg's easement through the rest of it. So with the city of Fredericksburg being on the easements along the river, there's actually no river crossing that does not include Stafford, Spotsylvania, and Fredericksburg.
city's easement is.
Throughout the entire length,
Not
all the way
in-
up in the north section of the river. The entire north side of the river is
Right,
Fredericksburg.
the north side of the river, they do own and they do have the coastal easement,
So-
yes.
I would just say if we're making a presentation, we should put everything we have behind what we voted for. I think statements about future possibilities are certainly worthwhile, but you don't have a lot of time. And they might not even be on C, so you're trying to tell them exactly why we wanted C.
I think it explains how we got to where we are.
Yeah.
Now, let's go back to the vote that we got to see. Well, that was a very close vote, if I recall.
We can pull up the minutes.
We went through it a couple of times.
It was
It
9
was
to
a
6.
contentious evening.
Yeah, mine one. Here's my question. Would you like staff to provide further input on the content? Because we're kind of neutral on the content, but we will
Say it again?
assist, provide comment on the content.
Well, not really.
Okay.
You're trying to take away the part.
Well, no, we have a serious issue with that, and that's for,
Can we
direct
blob it
orders.
instead of writing a line? Putting a line? Can we put a corridor? Why
I
not?
don't want a line or
No,
anything that goes into there.
What was the vote, Lita?
Yeah, it was 7-4 with one abstention.
Okay. Thought it was
That-
tighter than that. But you got my vote because the green line's on there. Okay,
Agreed.
otherwise I would
But-
have voted for no build with Rupert, okay? Because it doesn't make any sense, and none of them make any sense to me, and I feel like the whole study has stonewalled us into picking one of those four that really, as a Spotsylvania guy, I don't want any of them. Because all you're gonna do is throw all the traffic back to me at Bragg Road, and I don't want it. You understand?
The idea was that this would actually allow more of a grid to be created if there were, it could branch off and go in two different directions.
And
Ultimately,
sometimes you gotta show.
I do think that's the best.
You can't tell,
Trying
them.
to-
show them.
That's why
I
I'm
mean,
asking if there's public
I
comment,
mean, at
because
this point in time, I would strongly recommend
that
that y'all talk with your own supervisors of whether or not
Felt-
this has things, because at this point in time, like, this is the item that in 2011, because it's going right through that, Rappahannock Parkway study where Spotsylvania led the resistance to that project. It's cutting right through that same area in homes and neighborhoods further south, and they were vehemently opposed to any type of river
That
crossing.
was
in
25 years ago.
Well, yeah,
Yes.
they stopped that discussion for 10 years.
Yeah, and listen, I don't disagree that this board would stop it again, but I think it's very short-sighted. And I've told them that on several occasions.
Yeah. We don't think that, staff doesn't necessarily think that
I
this
mean, I
bridge is
yelled
without
on-
merit. It's just, we are told to explore a river crossing between Stafford and Spotsylvania.
Exactly.
And we had a letter of opposition from Spotsylvania saying that they oppose this project or in river crossings.
Let's go back to the vote where we voted for the money to study it. I voted against the study because it did not include the word Spotsylvania in it. I just, let you know where I stand. I think it's short-sighted, and I think we're getting stonewalled into a bridge we really don't need to spend $250 million on. honestly.
One other thing regarding the TOD, city has created too. I believe it said it between 8 to 12 different data centers. That's what it said right now. So this provides for the opportunity, you know, there's no one to say that actually where the blue line comes and connects to Gordon Shelton, not to Gordon Shelton, but probably South Parkway, that it hasn't necessarily be there. It's probably the best location for it because I can't imagine the traffic, if it was going to, for example, come straight through here and connect or connects to everything. You know, that would be enormous, but obviously this does create an opportunity and also where a path is to still create quite a large number of data centers.
Population's coming. I mean, this sucks, you know, in a lot of ways, but at least we're getting something that's gonna off, or gonna handle.
Saying they were gonna put data centers.
Just a bad choices.
I mean, that's the largest.
Y'all
The
are,
electricity coming.
It's continuing discussion.
That
I've kind of lost it. It's sort
That's
of
the deal.
going like this
They
and
cannot, they
like
need the
this.
big power.
So could
lines.
we, you know, kind of get back to like down the road and stick to the agenda rather than this circular whirlpool?
well, at Sponsoring Transportation Committee, we discussed a Fry Lane connection. We discussed that. And that's what I brought to this committee, and that's what we've discussed and put in here and voted on and all that stuff. So now you want to take it off.
I'm just arguing not drawing the line. Like that it,
Can we draw?
How can I put it this
a
way?
wide line?
the reason why Al is here is because I had to put a line down on paper. I mean, in and around his house, because I had to draw lines to show the, lines matter much more so
I
than
get,
you might
I
think.
get that. I get that a few people would probably not like that line. Here or
You
there.
wanna excise the line for public perception purposes and.
Yeah.
No, I'm doing it because the way that we've been directed by our board and our supervisors to explore a connection between the city of Fredericksburg and Stafford County, and being fully aware that the supervisors for Spotsylvania
Don't wanna have anything to do with that.
have multiple occasions said no. And
Worried that we're
Well,
answering a question that wasn't asked.
I don't agree with you on that, because I think you changed your tune since the very first time. Because when she brings up the New Post Bridge, then Diggs says, oh, I'm against that unless, and she's like, no, we're not against that
no, I
bridge.
agree, but we
You
need to have
understand what I'm
Spotsylvania
I understand.
help and direct.
You have them a letter from them, they're, yeah, we don't want the bridge. I get it, I got it. But I also think it's short-sighted.
Because I'm so new here, I don't know the history of it, so I'm just trying to figure out what was it supposed to solve? What problem was it
The
solving?
bridge,
Yeah, I
I have
mean,
no
is it
idea.
congestion or?
It's,
no idea.
You know,
it's
the growth of population?
population growth between
Well-
now and 2050. It's going to be huge and they're trying to offload.
From
Stop me
where?
if I'm
From
wrong.
What you're trying to do is get
To
a.
capture the local traffic
95.
more so than the regional traffic, trying to capture local traffic, trying to get down between Stafford and Fredericksburg, so they don't have to necessarily go on 95 and
And
clutter that up.
95 to.
Or one, and so this is just another option, and
To get right to
Where you
basically
need to be.
Carlton Civil Road.
yeah, or Fredericksburg or something like that, yes.
That's also known as building your way out of congestion.
Can I answer it? As Stafford approved a comprehensive plan for a road that goes from Garrisonville Road and it would cross the
What
river
is siege?
and connect the route.
Like,
Well, no, you have to.
That's what that's Stafford's plan is. So basically, there's a parallel road on the west side of 95 with a trail that
Says.
that will be a local road,
He can't.
local traffic,
He's saying
and
blinders on.
it connects
We are been
the
directed.
population centers with destination centers and the work centers.
I'm not.
The shortest possible route, and it will
Just like.
reduce driving by a significant amount.
Okay. That makes sense.
And some of the biggest intersections that ever.
say that there's a cure.
Like the Falmouth intersection,
I'm just gonna say.
it reduced like 13%. Regional traffic, reduced by 20% under uh,
That line on it.
heavy congestion.
But not part of the
Mhm,
presentation.
Temporarily.
Informational purposes.
Well, everything's temporarily. One thing I do have to say is, this proposed crossing here goes over the Salem Church battlefield.
Uh-huh.
It's right on the edge of it, and
Not part of
the
presentation. But
there should be, I think there's a crib dam somewhere.
It's a solution.
Canal in this area.
Clinton, do you have a comment?
So, two comments, actually. I guess two potential solutions that I think might solve a lot of the consternation here. So either we could, and this is still to protect our desire, you know, as a body to present what we think is what the people most likely want. Carve that out and present it separately during public comment, right? With maybe a reference to, hey, this is out there and we can provide it to you if you want to invite us back during public comment. Or I was just asking John if staff would have an issue providing, you know, carving this out of the presentation itself and then putting it in with the backup slides for information purposes only as another alternative that we discussed here, but not part of the presentation on record. And certainly, you know, they can view it at their, have any questions they wanted to present to this body. Both of those, I think, preserve the staff's desire to follow the guidelines that we were given and our desire to present that as a possible alternative, because I agree with some of the conversation here. If the governing folks from Spotsylvania don't see this, they may never think of it. And so how could they ever discuss it if they don't know about it? So to that extent, I think either of those solutions would probably serve our purposes. And it would cut the presentation down a little bit more.
The one thing I would, that sounds fine. One thing I would say is if we were asking a question and let's assume that the scenario becomes that the city of Fredericksburg, because of the TOD or whatever other reason, does not want to support this particular crossing that we have wind up being, you know, being here. And the entire policy board can't come to any kind of an agreement. We still need a bridge.
We'll just Ross and Rachel our way on
And then it would-
down the road like we've done the last 30 years.
So the idea would be, this is just, and again, the way this has been portrayed somewhat is like, this is what we chose, you know, connecting what would be C, but crossing the river where D would cross and so forth, that we see there in blue. But also consider this. Not saying that this is necessarily, you know, ultimately, it's just something that we would like you to consider. Can it be posed that way? This is the only area that I was able to.
FAMPO has highly allergic to drawing or showing anything that draws a line into Spotsylvania County. That's a part of the river crossing, unless it's at New Post.
All right, could.
And if you like,
Sorry for standing up. What if instead the video continues down and it shows, you know, Route 3 where Fry Road was and so forth. And literally there's like a star in that particular area. And then there's another star here. We actually just don't have a line, but we're saying this stays away literally from, you know, in this land. This is the only land I could find along Route 3 that actually doesn't have homes and doesn't have streams. It is literally the only area that I could see. And the other consideration is we've often talked about, this is the first bridge, but we will ultimately down the road need another western bridge too. This kind of establishes the possibility that maybe you could consider this down the road. And it literally says that down the road, that, you know, this could be something that gets considered in addition.
Can we put stars in
What we're
the line?
presenting. This is something to
I
consider.
concur with John that if it's kryptonite to do it, don't do it.
I agree with
Yeah.
that. I agree with that.
However, he didn't have a problem with verbalizing it. And if this is a really important part of our decision making, and this is what justified us choosing C over B, I think it should be said in a generic way. They're gonna get the hang of it. Hey, we're thinking even further down the road by choosing this route, that it gives us viable options that would not increase the infrastructure needed to expand. I mean,
What I would be worried about is this, is that they're gonna look at this, they're gonna realize we can only put one crossing. You're putting a crossing there, they're talking about this other crossing. I don't wanna even listen to this anymore. I'm gonna go with option A and B and forget those people.
Yeah.
That is what I think.
We have to look at the reality.
If they don't,
John's
you know, we
talking
got,
reality.
yeah, we got one crossing because of the easements. I understand, option A did not affect the easement, is that correct?
It may not. We don't know. The corridor, it is like right on the edge where
Okay.
it may or may not, and it takes surveying to determine that. So if you
Okay.
want two options, option A at least leaves that open, depending that it doesn't hit a hiccup later.
But
you-
the easement has a clause in it that allows a river cross.
One time.
One river
Okay.
crossing, so you
Neither
shot it
of
right there.
these deal with the locations of the easements.
But, I mean, Fredericksburg owns the easements along the river all the way up
They
to,
own it on the Stafford side.
yeah. At that point in time, anything that even tries to cross into Stafford from Spotsylvania on up, done.
Is
City
it a
controls that.
conservation easement or is it just an easement? Because what it was originally was VEPCO, Virginia
Yeah.
Power owned the easement because they were gonna dam.
Wasn't an easement then.
Down Church Lake.
It was an easement in 2006 when they voted on it. Yeah.
So they changed it to a conservation.
at the end of the day, I think our responsibility is to explain why these people in this room decided what we decided based on certain priorities, environmental, cost, you know, and, in 6 minutes, I think it really could be that simple, that this body is what you need to represent.
Right. Yeah.
And to say we took into consideration future opportunities was important to us. And, you know, I think just using those words rather than a visual there. And, you know, we don't have control over what gets done ultimately.
Right.
And we don't have control over whether or not future easements could change. I mean, if you're talking 50 years down the road, you don't know what the rules are gonna be. So I just think focusing on what we discussed, he did a really good job of saying, these are all the things we took into account.
Mhm.
I think it sums it up very nicely.
Okay, so can we agree to take the green line off then?
That's what I was asking. was
Take
it
out
one-
and satisfy John?
Or we could certainly do that. The other thing we can do is as the video is playing, when we get to the point when we have finished talking about the modifications to.
See.
He don't want us to bring it up. He don't want us to bring it up at all.
I wouldn't bring it up.
No,
Don't even say the word.
You know, I would do something
The
more
point.
subliminal,
Generic, yeah.
and I would just
The poison-
zoom out.
There's a lot of rules for
It would show
future.
future,
No,
but then you don't have to say, you know,
listen, I'm telling you.
They're gonna come in and they're gonna say, we got one crossing, we're gonna do another crossing. We only allowed one crossing, and they're looking at us, and we don't know. what we're doing.
Oh,
but his responsibility is to tell how we came to our conclusion.
But one thing
It's
I
gonna give it-
gotta say, I've been doing some research on Civil War and basically on May 3rd, 1863, there's basically 3 battles going on that day. And it was the second most deadliest day in the Civil War. So
Back then.
the Second Battle of Fredericksburg happened, then they went to Salem Church at the same time, the battle in Chancellorsville, so they all kind of, the 3 battles were all related. And General Sedgwick retreated across the river on option C. At that location, there's also Scott's Mill that's in that location. So I just wanted to bring that up. Also, this is a river intake right here. So it's best if you're gonna cross it with a bridge to not cross upstream of that intake. If there's chemical spills on the bridge and it impacts it.
All right, any other revisions other than taking the green line off?
I just have one suggestion. Al, I am not trying to give you more work, but we're operating with a captive audience, so if we were looking to trim, there's maybe about 20 or 30 seconds, at least on the front end, because they already know what we're talking about. This is really built for an outside audience, I thought.
Don't assume that.
Oh, okay. I retract my last then.
Well, staff would also,
Sometimes a reminder is helpful.
Gotcha.
staff also wants to point out that the policy committee is expecting a presentation, not a video. I would make that is a interesting thing.
Well, I
that-
think they're gonna get the video, because the video explains it better than any presentation could, in my
If that
opinion.
And it's
it
short.
is,
And
that's
it's short.
fine,
If we have any
but-
questions after that, we'll take questions, but
Is there a potential that it increases the likelihood that they'll discount it? Because it's not someone speaking with a voice.
Well, the other part is that
at the end of the day,
this is attached to a document
I
that
think-
they will have the opportunity to.
listen, at the end of the day, VDOT's gonna make the decision where the fund's gonna go. Okay, based on dollars and cents, okay? So what, we can sit here and talk about to the end of the earth, but they're gonna make the decision at the end of the day.
I know, but it gets me though, in 2005, Silver built the road. Celebrate Virginia Parkway to accommodate a river crossing. He put it in the best location possible for the least environmental impacts and the shortest distance. And if we can't agree to build a 1.5 mile road with a bridge on it, how are we gonna build a 4 or 5 mile road with a bridge? I mean, option, in 2013, there was a study done that showed basically option B, where to be located. And it's the shortest option, the least impervious area. It impacts the least amount of streams, RPA. If it didn't have Commerce Parkway on it, in the cost estimate, it would cost the least. And you can dam up a dry stream there and create one large retention basin for practically the whole bridge. So environmentally, it's one, the best option with that aspect, and it doesn't impact the waterfalls.
Yeah, oh, yeah. We've already set on C, so.
Are we basically saying we want to stop the video at this particular right here?
See, because my
Yeah.
question is, and just forgive me if I got this wrong, but you chose option C, which is the blue. But then the only way that you can prove that it really holds a lot of weight is if you were to show spots of paint.
No,
Is that how-
No, we
Option
were
C.
trying to get them involved.
Get more
and-
Yeah.
involved with it.
They
Okay,
are,
but the
yeah.
option-
I mean, they are going to use.
Trying to get-
So
whatever
option
gets
C is the
built.
best way, no matter how.
Well, you're
you
trying to
look
get
at it.
some regional consensus, right? I mean, yeah.
So it's the best option. no
I mean,
matter what.
A didn't do anything responsive. B and,
Everybody agrees on that.
yeah,
Okay.
Not, you know,
yeah.
Okay, okay.
We're not all gonna, and ain't nobody gonna all agree on it,
majority.
but,
The majority agreed
if-
that option C was the
yeah.
best.
Yeah,
if I may,
Mhm.
we have a couple other items. The presentation gets a very long time to get to C,
Mhm.
and it's why you're saying C. In fact, at the beginning of the presentation, the first time I viewed it, I was like, wait a minute, you're almost advocating for option B. Like you give the thumbs up and everything. I would say you reviewed the options. Option C is the preferential for these reasons. I would not go and talk the other ones, because it's going to get into an argumentative point for, well, you made this point about this one. We disagree with that, so therefore we can stop listening into it. I think you need to
How much you gonna tell them?
Yeah.
tell them C.
Yeah.
The policy committee likes executive summaries. They want you to get to the point. They don't want folks to kind of give them the long way of getting there. They want to know their destination. And then once you tell them your destination, say these are the positive points for it. We looked at the other options. We didn't think that they provide the best, and C is the best for this, this, and this. Like it's almost like boom, 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 and that's the reason why
Yeah.
I like Staff comments on the content, and we're being relatively neutral other than that green line because we're
Right.
sensitive to that. That would be us like, come out, you said C with modifications. Now, the other item that staff had is that we were talking with Becky, who handles a lot of the finances, C with modifications. To make that a part of the study, we're looking at a change order with the consultant, and it's about $100,000, if not more,
What's
to
that percentage
explore
of the
that.
Total value of the contract.
640.
1/6.
What if we just got traffic counts?
It would.
I would like to see the traffic counts before I decide if I would support that or not.
I mean, it would.
It's just, what I'm afraid of is, that it will be used as a bypass to get off of Route 3 and onto 17 and create more traffic on 17, because there's no direct path from 17 to the Centerport interchange.
No, I mean, it's actually the data for that's in Al's presentation that shows that the induced demand, depending on the options.
So.
So from the
So.
1997 study, it showed in 2020, it showed like 42,000 trips in 2020. But
Well, it shows
basically-
induced demand levels. I think it's in one of the spreadsheets for all the options and compares the options of which one does. Generally, as you move west, you induce more demand, relatively speaking, but it's not one-to-one always, but
There's a fine line in there somewhere. You get too far west, they ain't gonna use it.
but just noticing that the consultants, like, you can endorse C and know that the next endorse C with modifications. You can say once it goes to the next step to add the extra dovetail to make it basically align with what was option D's southern area.
Right.
But if you want to, they cannot come out and say option C as modified as a recommendation because it has not been a part of the study and it hasn't had public comment.
Well, did we
to
pick
redo
D
the
or did we
public-
pick C? We picked
It's C with
the
modifications.
alignment
but-
of D though, isn't it?
The crossing is D.
Oh, okay.
So as far as the length of roads, I mean, they must have information for the length of road that would be,
Needed.
essentially from where Celebrated Virginia Parkway. I mean, obviously Greenbank is out of the picture for this, but they have an idea of what the length of road would be and they could estimate, I imagine, what the cost would be. They also know that the D bridge is, I think it was 1,400 feet, so it was the shortest bridge, so they have that.
So we need to be careful because you're pulling from the cost estimates here. And so when they're doing the bridge links and cost estimates, it's for the whole project. So anytime where they have to cross another, like Sanford for option A, it's not the length of the bridge they're saying. They have to build in 500 feet of bridge work for their cost estimates. They're basically looking at linear sections.
Okay.
That's what's building in it. So you can't necessarily look at that because any creek or any other thing that they have to cover or cross is included in that as well. So it's not a thing of the span over the river. So just be very careful about using that metric that way. But yeah, just getting back to it, it's talking about the logical output of this with modifications is that the consultant isn't going to be able to come around and say, okay, we're going to look at option C with modifications. They're going to come back and say, if you want to do this, it's a change order because it's currently outside the scope and not one of the options that's been identified thus far.
So you're saying that we would be back to voting on something? If we say, okay, we'll do this, but only if it's modified, and so somebody has to go study it. They do public comment, then it comes back to us, and then we have to reevaluate the whole spiel,
Again,
which resets all the effective work that the committee has done up until.
not necessarily.
I
We
mean-
can amend it and it's going back and looking at an additional option. But that's not necessarily required or prohibits option C as modified as presented this, but you're gonna have to say, we pick option C. And in the next round, look at this alignment too, because we're gonna have to look at additional alternatives later anyway as part of the NEPA process. Like we can't not look at more alternatives even after making those, but we have to pick a quarter to get to that.
So do we need to revisit the vote that led to this presentation as it stands now? To do what you just said, we vote C as the best of the presented options. However,
Well, I
in the
think
next
seeing
phase, we want you to
modifications, your
consider these
recommendations is solid, but it's going to require. If you want to have this as the end product of the consultant's report, we're looking at a change order. Like, and
Yeah,
they're
that-
gonna
that
cost.
works for that too. That-
So basically, you've given us 4 options and we gotta pick, it's like a multiple choice test and we gotta pick one.
And this is a
And,
down select is what they're
and-
doing. You
yeah.
give you 4, you pick
Yeah.
which one's the best out of the 4.
Well,
And then if it
well,
needs
and
to
then
change from there, you do
they
something.
made 2 of them, you can't even vote for either A or D, cause they cost too damn much or destroy 63 people's houses. I mean, it's not even an option. It's not a worthy option. So it's, it's almost like they're forcing you to pick the one, in the middle. I don't know. I don't like the whole process, to be quite honest with you. And you don't want me to vote again, I can tell you that right now.
Are we moving forward to come to some decision so we can wrap this up? It's been almost an hour. It's like, and it's the same that I've seen.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that CTAC goes on record as not endorsing any option across the Rappahannock River.
There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I didn't expect a second really, but I'd like to know that it's now a matter of record that at least one person cares enough about the environment to do the most environmentally friendly thing, and that is no build.
Any other motions on the floor? Any substitute motions? No?
Oh, for whatever we're going to present, we have to have that completed and to you by Friday. Is that correct? Is that what you had said?
No, we have more time, so this is
Well,
one of the
was it-
things, we talked with the chairs of the committee and say, we're probably at a point where we need more time, so we're not. Or delaying other things, and so this is even something that, one, I'm willing to host a subcommittee, so it's still a public meeting, so if you want to have a smaller group who's interested in the river crossing, hammer something in a presentation out, we can.
We can
Or
do
we
that.
can decide what you want to present and move
Let's
forward.
do that. Let's form a subcommittee on who wants to deal with it. Kevin, if you don't want to come to that one, you don't have to come to that one. But let's shorten it up a little bit, cut out the green line, things that we've said tonight. And before that subcommittee meeting.
Yeah, so can I making a recommendation for that to the committee and then have the CTAC go ahead, give the subcommittee power to say, this is the CTAC's viewpoint. So basically kind of write a check if you want to do that so that we can come back to the CTAC, but we're going to be in a similar boat as far as the presentation timeline. It won't be able to get on the policy committee unless you do something before the Wednesday for the policy, which is always the CTAC meeting.
Right.
Seems to me that we're basically there. We're all agreeing,
Yeah.
we're in violent agreement that the green
Yeah.
line needs to come off
Okay.
per John's
Well,
recommendation.
well, I
So
don't,
isn't that just
And we can
option
move
C?
forward with
Is
modification.
that
Yeah.
just option C?
Yeah.
It's where we were to begin with a.
And that's what's
line.
in right now,
mhm.
and
Yeah.
so put that in and then,
Yes.
then you can come later, come back with modifications, right? Or amendments.
Well,
So the recommendation, as I understand it, and I'll summarize and hopefully that'll
Okay.
for everybody, including me, because I've kind of lost the plot a little bit too. So C with modifications is our recommendation. But then when they ask us when we would like that to happen, we can choose to say we would like it to happen in this study or the next one. Choose the next one because it's 1/6 of the price to add it in at the 11th hour of this study. Which isn't likely to result in anything but consternation.
it might be the cheapest way to go though.
It may well, if it were between adding it now and no extra study, then yes, I would agree, but if we're gonna have another study anyway. Katie,
Right.
bar the door, just let it
Yeah.
fly.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I do
Uh,
think it's important to include, focus and emphasize the part where we said, this is why we didn't like this. This is why we didn't like
Yeah, I'm
that.
happy with it the way it is. but I
Yeah,
agree.
like,
That
I think.
staff as a part of the river crossing process, because we talked about this enough within it. We are including some of the discussions, actually most of the discussions through the minutes and other comments made through CTAC. We talked about the previous months is as kind of a appendix to the report. So along with, we put every single public comment that we received into the report. We're also pulling like the CTAC's recommendations and discussions also into that report, just because it was a large public outreach item. So
It's like bargaining industry.
The meeting on Monday, I mean, when we were at the last policy board meeting, they talked about us doing a presentation, and I did initially say it was gonna be at the March meeting.
Mhm.
So now we're trying to push that back. to-
April, we had a conversation with the chair of
Chairman.
the policy committee, as well as I talked with
Right.
him at the same time and saying, are we there to be able to give a presentation? And
Well, Al, why don't you, make some edits
Mhm.
and send it out to everybody?
All right.
And,
Right.
if anyone has.
please
any-
do not respond because it's making decisions, FOIA requirements to it. You can receive the information, but you cannot electronically communicate it as part of CTAC. That's the reason why I suggested subcommittee, because I'll make this room available and put out public notice. And if you want to talk about it before,
Because it all has to be on the
So
record.
if we're going to have a subcommittee, we need to do that tonight. We need to figure that out tonight. So you're putting us in a bind on time. I feel like I'm being railroaded here. I don't like it.
Al just makes his corrections, submit to
Hmm.
Tim, that's the
Mhm.
subcommittee. And then Tim can make the decision whether or not, as the chair of the body, whether or not it represents.
that's
what
the other
he heard
option.
here.
Yeah.
All right, let's do it that way. End of subject? We don't need a motion, do we?
Nope.
All right, done.
Yeah, one last thing I want to point out, and Lisa's pointed it out as well, is part of me definitely wants to try to involve the county of Spotsylvania. Wants to let them know that we had thought about doing something or adding something to this. How do we go about at some point in time, letting them know that this would be potential viable addition?
I'm gonna bring it up tomorrow night at Transportation Committee, Spotsylvania.
Okay.
I'll bring it up tomorrow night. I'll let you know.
But right now, the
Show up.
party line is that this committee already let them know that the problem's going on. They said they didn't want to dance.
All right.
Staff can submit comments for CTAC.
I think all they have is piece of paper from the force of saying they don't want a bridge.
You don't
That's what
know.
they have.
No, it's part of us, like.
Didn't get
you
an
to
RSVP.
Right.
put that,
Yeah.
including commentary to
All right.
that.
All right, moving on. Next item, 2050 long range transportation plan.
Okay, so this is a fairly standard document that all NPOs across the country have. It's their long range transportation plan. These are updated every about, I think, 5 years. And so we're actually in the middle of one. We're actually going to start doing our next long range plan next fiscal year, or at least start to work on the next one. However, in the meantime, we do add modifications to the document. And in comments received by the community, one of the major areas where the community wished that we had items or did address was for the accessible and accessibility options, particularly from the disability community. So we had comments from Disability Resource Centers of the Rappahannock area, as well as the citizen Jane Leeds, say that our long-range plan did not identify enough accessibility goals and projects and descriptions. So in the meantime, while we're eventually going to be rewriting them, we do want to add a few items to our long-range plan that address that. So in our goals section, we're adding accessible to descriptions of transit, ride sharing, and transportation systems things. So it's adding this as a metric of how we should kind of address our projects. So we have the specific language going on there, but as a goal, a regional goal, we are now saying to develop affordable and accessible paratransit. That's new. Or a demand response system that meets the needs of people without access to current public transportation systems. So this is going beyond the ADA minimum requirement that you provide transit within a certain radius around bus stops and bus lines, that this is going to say we want something a little bit larger. Enhanced pedestrian crossings. So right now, I think traditional VDOT standards is that if something goes out, it's updated as things are refreshed. And this is trying to just say, hey, you need to look at these options when updating it, and that VDOT should also update it. It's some stuff that we're already doing, but it's also just bringing greater awareness within the document. Next slide.
Is there any regulation that defines what accessible means in terms of like cost controls and things like that? Or
So
that's a pretty broad word.
yeah, it is adding it to the goal. So we are doing kind of broad strokes for this item. So but with the cooperative research program there, they do have more specific guidelines and best practices which should follow. So
So that
is
term
in
will be
that.
defined within the confine.
Correct.
ADA has guidance on that stuff too.
You said over and above, that's why.
ADA is the minimal, there's a difference between ADA compliant and accessible, it's like the next step up. Because,
And kill a budget.
so, again, goal 3, add objectives, so that in this case, it's like, where do we go? Ensure that stops are physically accessible for a wide range. Buses and trains displays or visual and auditory announcements are coming. That's kind of unique. So Amtrak does it, VR, the audible things and everything up here are controlled by VRE, not by Amtrak. And so their system doesn't necessarily talk to each other. So that's actually kind of an issue. And this is highlighting that this needs to be addressed. So you do have these additional improvements, 2 items: improve pedestrian crossings at transit stops. So it's kind of just looking for improvements to the system to make things more accessible. Next. So those are just procedural things for the objectives to collaborate with area agencies. And it's basically saying we didn't use the word accessible a lot in our document. We should add some of that to it. And so that goes into it. In addition, we have minor revisions to add new studies. Again, the document's a couple of years old and there's been things that have happened since then. And so we're updating it. We don't have smart scale results in. So the last couple of rounds of the transportation projects haven't necessarily been updated. We have updated crash maps and tables, and it's just a minor update before we do the large revision in about the next upcoming year.
John,
Yes.
is there any weight to this or is it aspirational?
There is weight to this. This isn't in the perfect world, but this is something that directs staff or projects, is that when something comes to us and say, is it in your long range plan? If it's not there, then it's potentially something that you would not address.
Okay, cool.
All right, next slide. We're updating just some data. So George Washington Reich getting their items, and we are just following suit. So just updating things since it hasn't been updated. So since 2020, I believe. So next slide. I think that's it, right? Every about 5 to 6 years.
You said next year's the next one?
We start working on it.
Okay,
Yeah.
when is what's the date?
Timeline.
To be done?
Probably FY27. So this is a mid cycle update, but it takes us a year or so to
Precursor,
update.
just to
Yeah.
tickle putting it in the next one. Got it.
So we're currently under public comment. The policy committee's receiving public comment, but we have the full edits available as a red line. They were made available in the last CTAC meeting, but staff would like a endorsement since we're in public comment right now from the CTAC for these changes.
I managed a human resource transportation program for healthcare, and it's definitely something that's needed. I'm glad to see that. Very happy to see that put into the long range transportation plan as a goal and policies that to expand that. And it's it's 0.75 miles from a fixed line or a bus stop that the ADA requirements on each side. So it's 1.5 miles, but there's a lot of people out there who need healthcare transportation. And it's a big reason why people have readmissions. And when they cannot get their follow-up, they have no ride to get to that follow-up appointment. They'll do anything from calling up an ambulance, which is a very expensive option, to just waiting until they are in a critical situation, have to go back to the hospital. Just to give you an idea, dialysis right there is, patients there have to go 12 hours in a chair a week. Their employment rate is 18%. I did not say unemployment. I said their employment rate is 18%, which means they usually don't have a health insurance. They usually don't have a car. They usually because they maybe have diabetes. They may not have vision. They may not have a limb, and they have no way of getting to the place. So I'm very happy to see that. And I would be very happy to talk about my program because it was completely 100% grant funded in Southern Maryland, and I have the hospital records to prove that we saved the hospitals money, a lot of money. Over 1 year in time, our long-term patients, the dialysis patients, generated hospital charges reduced by at least 6%, you know, by at least 1% to up to 6% a year over a year. That's pretty significant for hospital because it's usually a very small targeted group of folks who are the returning patients who are what do you call them, returning customers or something like that. So glad to see it.
And
Move
I'm-
that we take a vote to endorse.
I make a motion to endorse the changes as proposed.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I will just add that the loss of transportation from King George into Fredericksburg through the Fred Go, is that it?
XBG go.
Okay, I think I had heard it didn't pay for itself, but the people that do need it, and so I don't know. I was looking through some of the nonprofits that provide transportation and stuff, and I was surprised that they only provide it for things like doctor's appointments. So I have firsthand experience with somebody who can't drive, and people need to go shopping and they need to go out to restaurants and to.
John, if you open
comment period.
Yes.
I wouldn't mind afterwards asking you some questions.
Yeah, don't ask me too much about it because I'll start talking your ears off.
All right, moving on, number 8, staff reports, John.
All right, why don't we open up the TAC? So part of it, we were gonna get in a little bit, it was the CMAC STBG update. And so they had that item. They also had an extensive discussion about smart scale and kind of the results coming about that. There is a regional kind of discussion among staff that's kind of coming together, meeting with OIP, the Office of Intermodal Transportation and EI investment. There we go. I was going to get there. So they're going to actually be meeting with folks from Richmond and kind of discussing kind of what's going on with our smart scale applications at a later time. That date isn't set, but that'll be a staff level discussion with the jurisdictions in the region. FAMPO is still kind of digging down into the data over that. We're going to be doing a future integrated network analysis, so that's the organized project looking at future conditions. I believe y'all have seen kind of the initial ones with the maps and the congestion, but we have been having that discussion with the TAC staff, and that there's also a FAMPO complete streets project that they're just looking to update. It's mostly just covering stuff that's already being done in the region, but the real core to that is that regionally, we stitched together a lot of the jurisdictions, kind of biped and some other infrastructure into that. So everything's kind of standalone, and we're the group that grabs and puts it together rather than all the jurisdictions operating independently. But that's kind of getting why FAMPO is involved in that. So, and then they had a discussion over Route 3 and the bump out. Just trying to define and describe kind of what entails of that project, just so that the jurisdictions are all on the same page, because while there's a lot of Route 3 projects going on and they're all kind of doing very similar things, they're actually independent projects. The scopes are cut up into different pieces. So they had a discussion about that, particularly between Spotsylvania and the city of Fredericksburg.
Say bump outs. I mean, I'm thinking bump outs like when you are on street parking, they have the. Is that what you're talking about?
Similar, but on the route.
Right now, what we have are 3 lanes, and then you have a right turn lane that appears and disappears at each intersection.
Okay, that's what
They're
you're.
gonna take that out so it's 4 lanes, and you take your life in your hand, making a right-hand turn. Yeah.
Thank you. That clarification.
Yeah, when we were on number 7, we didn't go through the transportation demand model or the active transportation plan. And, we kind of skipped over that.
Well,
We had a motion.
But the motion was, we were on goals and objectives. So I thought the motion was to approve the goals and
I
objectives.
think the motion was all.
Yeah, it was all on there. We went.
It was
through
there, it
to
just
see.
wasn't detailed, I
just-
don't think.
Right.
Small items.
But we didn't go over the, active transportation plan, because that's, I particularly wanted to talk about that. Didn't, well, it doesn't show the maps.
Yeah, I remember seeing that.
We didn't look at the maps.
if you pull up
Appendix
the
B.
changes.
I can
Let's go.
waiting for.
The East Coast Greenway map,
These are the maps that we updated.
okay, are there,
We haven't,
this past,
these are the only ones we've updated. They're the crash maps. All the other ones have been in the plan already. These are the only updated maps.
go up, please.
Sidewalks.
Okay, there,
That's right.
that's it. From, my recollection, the, Greenway and Stafford, the plan was actually to go down Truslow, which I didn't agree with, but, this, are you going too high? Stafford's at the top, okay. See, they have this plan going right by the dump.
Mhm.
And on, Brook Road through, the little underpass there at Andrew Chapel, going up to Andrew Chapel through, and through Courthouse, and I just don't think that's the best location, particularly since, you know, the comprehensive plan in Stafford shows a 4-lane road with a trail on it. It's gonna go from 610 to Celebrate Virginia Parkway. And, you know, we already have the, you know, 2 miles of trail at Celebrate Virginia Parkway and another 2 miles there up on Mine Road that would be part of it. And another mile at Plantation. So it just seems to me that that would be a better location, because on the east side of 95, that's not really our growth area. We don't have the infrastructure there to grow. There's no, don't have the sewage pump stations, the water towers, the road network or anything. So the growth area is targeted on the west side of 95. So it just seems to me that you'd want to put a trail in where more people would use it, that doesn't go by the dump or doesn't go over a lot of wetlands and so forth, or poor soils, because that's what Brook Road is. Plus, there's a number of driveways.
We're not amending this. We are, you know, Stafford just redid their comprehensive transportation plan. We have not fully integrated. That will be integrated at the full revision of the long range transportation plan. That's when we do the major revisions to that. We're not going to do a revisit or reanalysis of.
Well, I don't think this matches the Stafford plan at all.
It
That's
did when this document was generated, but since then Stafford
how many
has.
years ago was that?
This was 2020.
Okay.
So that we are updating some items that we're required to update. We update the whole document, but we don't constantly revisit the whole document through the whole process. It's done at intermittent stages. So that's the reason why we received comment on the accessibility. We're updating that. We've had some changes to the active transportation plan, but we're not redoing the whole section. We're updating a few things that we need to update. And then when we do the full revision of the long range transportation plan, when we start kicking off next fiscal year, then that's when we start integrating Stafford's most recent changes to its both comp plan and or transportation master plan. So.
Okay.
Not necessarily disagreeing, but that's just outside the scope of this amendment at this point in time.
Okay.
Not necessarily disagreeing, but
This wasn't something new put on there. As, they said, The plans have changed since 2020, so.
And that's why we update the full document, but this is just modifications for some changes we have to. And I think that would be important for the accessibility community.
All right, to the policy committee report.
Okay, so there are no major new updates as far as the river crossing, although there was conversation that kind of steered into that. Probably the big item was, again, they directed public comment and discussed the smart scale and kind of the changes there. But the CMAC STBG methodology, so the policy, we went to the policy committee to kind of steer us into which direction you would like to analyze. They decided, you know what, we're good right now. We're going to go ahead and take a vote of how to redistribute the CMAC STBG money. This is a final fund that's just under $6 million a year. And currently what the process is or was that each jurisdiction would submit projects for it. It was based on a formula regarding to highways, transit, or bike ped, and the competitive projects would get it. It results in that some years you will have a bigger pot of funding than other years. So the pot of funding can change significantly, and that causes a ripple effect for which projects are selected, as well as that you can have jurisdictions that literally don't get anything for a few years, and then all of a sudden they get a lot for a couple of years, and they get it. It's very difficult for some of the jurisdictions to kind of plan out that. The policy committee voted to distribute it by population and urbanized population as a composite formula, and directed staff and the TAC to develop a new methodology. So rather than a competitive process, it's by formula based on population and urbanized population. And it'll give the jurisdictions the ability to split that money on, if they want to put it all on roadways, all on bike ped, they are enabled to do so. So that was a big item. Of course, that's distributing money, and that's the reason why we made it, because I talked about that this was something that was being developed at the previous CTAC, and that it has direct implications on how projects are funded in the region. So
Was that it for policy?
that's it for policy in the CMAC.
I felt like something else was really heated there at the end, but I can't remember what it was. Oh, regional cooperation. That's right.
I think the newspaper said rowdy.
Rowdy, is that what it said? I don't read the paper, so I don't know. All right, member reports. Anybody have any public outreach or acknowledgements or anything they want to say? Go around the room. Anybody? Anyone? We want to welcome Ms. Parker here, new member from Stafford. Anyone else?
Yeah.
Al?
So that I have potentially a little bit more direction, if anyone who's willing to stay around for a very, very short time after the meeting to talk to me.
Pause. If we're gonna have a discussion about that, we should do it while the meeting is open.
All right, because I'm at some point going to be a little more direct.
Can't have a couple of folks hanging around and
Okay.
That's a FOIA issue.
Unless it's only two of us.
That was the sub. Two.
Can Tim stay and talk to me?
It's your subcommittee, do what you want.
I'll stay and talk to you, Al. All right, moving on to public comment. Anyone from the public that want to speak? Anyone? Nobody from the public? Future agenda items. Does anyone have any future agenda items they would like to discuss? Anyone?
Yeah, can we get updates on transportation
I was gonna.
have been
I was
approved?
gonna. bring it up. Yeah.
And the funding is there, but we don't know what's going on with them?
What I would like to see is Kyle Bates, president in there, come over here and give us a dissertation on all the current construction projects, where they're at, when they're gonna be done, and what they got coming forward. He does that at the Spotsy committee every once in a while, and I think this committee would get a lot of info out of that.
Actually, that's something that the NPO has been wanting, and we're kind of leaving this out because we've been talking with VDOT at regular intervals, and VDOT's here, so I won't speak for them. At my former NPO, we would get monthly updates, kind of a spreadsheet on things. that's just not done here. I know that there was asked before, and we don't know where VDOT would want to do
They
those
came and
updates.
gave us an update, I believe it was last month.
Yeah.
On everything Spotsylvania was doing. Now, I would be interested in what's going on in Stafford, you know?
So Stafford actually just did something at their last board meeting where they kind of have like their biannual transportation review, like they'll say which projects are on schedule, over budget, under budget, kind of where that is. It's on their agenda. It's just a question of,
Well, the other thing I would like Kyle maybe to explain, I'm doing two projects right now, both of them right alongside, one of them's alongside of Route 1. The other one's alongside, Old Plank Road. And one of the reasons are, you know, we don't build any new roads. We just add on